Hey everybody, it's Tony Cataspati from GreatVocalMajority.com website and YouTube channel and a bunch of other things. Uh, let's talk about last night's debate. Last night was the third debate, and it was very well moderated, I think, by Chris Wallace. But everybody in the media today seems to be focusing on something Trump said. That's what I want to talk about. Now I want to see if I got this right. Hillary Clinton is horrified that Donald Trump will not say today that he accepts the results of the election, however it turns out. What is she horrified about? I think I know. Hillary Clinton is an entitled, spoiled brat who has used the power of her position to flatten anyone who has ever stood in her way. About the only person who ever was able to avoid being flattened was Obama. So now she expects the last man standing in her path to voluntarily just step aside, and despite there being growing mountains of evidence that the Democrats are massively and illegally gaming the system and corrupting the electoral process. I mean, just stop and think about what they're doing. You saw those videotapes from James O'Keefe. Oh, I know there are people in the media say, "Well, he's been convicted of a crime and he doctors tapes." Well, these are words coming out of the mouths of Democrats that have been to the White House hundreds of times. Things like, "We are committing voter fraud." That's what they're saying in these tapes, and that's the media just says nothing to see here, nothing to see. Move on. That's the first thing. There's also evidence that the FBI abandoned its standards of investigation in the matter of Clinton's server, which, if it were done properly and according to their standards, that would have led to an indictment of Hillary Clinton on literally thousands of violations of the Espionage Act, which would have put Hillary Clinton in jail if she were convicted for the rest of her life, and technically until the year 50,000. I mean, it would have been really as an unbelievable number of violations there, and so there's that. So the system has really been corrupted to its core, from the president on down. And how do we know that the president is involved now? We know that Obama's involved because he said he had no knowledge of her private server, but we know he sent emails to her under a pseudonym to the private server. He had to know. I mean, HillaryClinton.com or whatever the domain name was is obviously not a government server, right? So, is he would he plead ignorance? Well, he could, but everybody knows ignorance is no excuse for the law. So you have that. And the media has been corrupted. We know that. We know it's been corrupted to its core. And it no longer acts in an adversarial role when it comes to Democrats, and we know why. I mean, let's go down the list. There's an incestuous relationship between the media and Democrats. There just is. Let's start with George Stephanopoulos. George Stephanopoulos, most people under 30, I would imagine, don't even know that George Stephanopoulos worked in the Clinton administration in the early 90s. They also don't know that George Stephanopoulos is connected to the Clinton Foundation. They probably don't know as well that George Stephanopoulos, when he wrote a book, chronicled in that book an exchange between him and Hillary Clinton where they expressed their love for each other. I mean, she said, "I love you, George Stephanopoulos," and he said, "I love you too," or something like that. I mean, that's not exactly the person that you want in the job of interrogating Hillary Clinton, is it? So, and especially when he doesn't reveal that he had that kind of relationship when he ever has an interview with her or one of the people who are on her team. So there's George Stephanopoulos. Then you have the Rhodes brothers, One of the Rhodes, I don't remember their first names. One is Ben, but I forget what the other one. I think David, but I'm not sure who's who. One of the Rhodes brothers is one of Barack Obama's national security advisors. The other is the president of CBS News. He decides what gets on the air and what doesn't for news at CBS. Okay? That means that, the brother could say, hey, call his other brother and say, we're getting a lot of heat. Could you lay low on that, those guns running into Mexico thing? That could happen. Then you have Susan Rice. Susan Rice is Obama's national security advisor, right? And she's married to the guy who produces George Stephanopoulos' weekly show. And then remember, let's get back to George Stephanopoulos for a minute. He's on, what's that Channel 7 morning show? Is it Good Morning America? I think it's Good Morning America. He's on there 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. So George Stephanopoulos, a Democrat hack, is on ABC, 21 hours a week. He's not an unbiased guy, and he never really fully discloses the fact that he is a Democrat. All right? You have those. And then I think my two favorites are Chuck Todd and Chris Matthews of MSNBC. Now Chuck Todd, he's got his Vladimir Lenin goatee, and he hosts Meet the Press, and he was a staffer for one of the most liberal senators who's ever been in the Senate from Iowa, Tom Harkin. Now, Tom Harkin's now out of the Senate, but when Tom Harkin was in the Senate, do you think Chuck Todd would have given him a tough interview? You think Chuck Todd would have revealed that, hey, I used to be an aide for Senator Harkin? You never heard that. I bet you don't even know that. You probably just found it out now. And then you have Chris Matthews. And Chris Matthews, if you know anything about him, you probably know that he was Jimmy Carter's speechwriter. Jimmy Carter, okay, another Democrat. But it doesn't end there with him. Chris Matthews also was an aide to the House Speaker in the 80s, Tip O'Neill. Now, that's significant because not just because he was a Democrat, but interestingly enough, Tip O'Neill and Chris Matthews, who helped him, engineered 6 government shutdowns while Ronald Reagan was president. Have you heard anything about that? When there was a government shutdown and the threat of a government shutdown, did MSNBC's Chris Matthews ever say that, I know a lot about this because I worked with a guy named Tip O'Neill who did 6 government shutdowns? No, you never heard that. Why wouldn't he tell you? Because each and every one of these guys want you to believe that they're not biased in any way. But they're not just biased, they're corrupt. And then we learn a whole slew of other, through these WikiLeaks things, a whole slew of other reporters in the media are go-to people for the Democrats. They list, hey, if you need a good write-up, get this guy. Then we have the guy from the New York Times submitting his article to Hillary Clinton's campaign to get their approval before he publishes it. That makes the New York Times a tool of the Democratic Party. Now, sure, you probably said, well, we kind of knew this, Tony. We knew this. Now we really know it. Now they can't deny it. Now it's like embarrassment time for these folks. So you have all of this going on. You got the media corruption. And why is it like this? Because they're all part of the same subculture in the Washington Beltway. They years and years ago, reporters were like working class kind of guys. They didn't hobnob with the muckety muck Washington people. They very rarely did that. Now they're all part of the same thing. They go to the same schools. They attend the same. Their children attend the same schools as their children. I mean, they're all together. They're friends. This is the problem, and they become they become subsumed by this culture of extremely democratically leaning people. And and that's one of the biggest problems we have. They don't even know they're corrupted. That's that's the worst thing of all. They think, well, this is normal. This is what people, but they are totally corrupted, and they're not just corrupted. They're completely divorced from the way the rest of the country lives and in their day-to-day lives. They're just completely out of touch. So this is all I'm putting all this together just to point out why the deck is stacked against Donald Trump or any Republican. The only difference between Trump and other Republicans is that the other Republicans were part of this subculture that I just mentioned. So hey, if I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. Oh, you got me good that time. I see what you did. They're all like friends. So they're not threatened by the loss of an election. Not really. I mean, because they're all within that milieu of the Washington, D.C. subculture. So, but see, Trump isn't part of that subculture, and he doesn't accept their norms. So therefore, in the light of all the corruption that he faces, why on earth would Donald Trump say he will accept the results of a process where news is breaking every single day that has been corrupted by the very people he opposes? Why would he ever do that? Did Al Gore do that in 2000? Do the Democrats today? This is what should be happening right now in the news media right now. When a Democrat operative for Clinton comes out and says something about how horrible it was that Trump said he will wait to see what the election results are before he accepts them. Do Democrats today accept that George Bush won the 2000 election legitimately? Do they? Find a Democrat that admits that. Find them. Ask them. If you are not, if you are someone who supports Trump or is not a Democrat, ask any Democrat who's voting for Clinton, do you accept the 2000 election results as legitimate? And let's see what they say. I guarantee you, they will all say, no, Bush stole the election. Well, what do you think Trump's afraid of? You have no grounds to stand on to say that Trump should accept what he already knows to be a corrupt process. We don't have to wait for election day. We see it today. Every day there is video coming out. And you should talk to your friends who are Democrats voting for Clinton, and you should confront them with the 2000 election results and ask them whether they consider those legitimate today. And I guarantee you, you're going to get an interesting answer. That's it for me. Tony Cotta-Spati from Great Vocal Majority. Thanks for watching. Take care.